Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to What Moves You. Hey everyone, I hope you're having an awesome day. I cannot wait to share this episode with you. It was truly so much fun to get to record with Hazlett, but it definitely was not without its technical difficulties. So as you'll hear throughout the episode, they were unfortunately doing their sound testing right as we started recording. So you'll hear a little bit of music. I think it adds to the vibe, which is why I left it in. But unfortunately, the first minute or so was not captured on the microphones. I really tried to make it work and use the phone audio, but as you can hear here, officially Hazlett, welcome to What Moves You. It was absolutely terrible, and I could not do that to your ears for 45 seconds. So instead, I figured I'd give just a quick little recap of what I asked so that you can segue nicely into the rest of the episode. So my first question for Hazlett was if he always knew that he was going to get into music one day. And his answer was no. He always used writing, songwriting, which he didn't know it was that at the time, as a form of self-therapy. And that's kind of where we leave off. Enjoy the transition from the phone audio to the mics, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Journaling type of way when it wasn't really meant to be a song.
I think so. I think it's like, I know a lot of people say it's like you get that self-therapy thing of like a lot of writing, a lot of music's like, that's kind of how it started. It's like, oh, something's going on in my life, let me figure it out, I'll write about it. And then kind of just also turn into music at the same time. So.
And is it scary sharing that with other people? Because obviously, like we can tell in your songs that it is, for the most part, like very personal. It's very vulnerable, I guess, what you share. Is it difficult for you to like then share that to the public?
I actually got asked that a few times from people, and I've never thought about it. And every time someone brings it up, I'm like, I never thought about it being scary, because I was like, I think the only scary thing was just performing for the first time. Okay. So I think for the most part, it's like, well, this stuff like happened and I worked through it. So it's not overly scary to me to like,
I get what you mean,
talk about it, because I think I'd be more scared if I was like, writing a fake story or like lying about something. Then I'd be like, oh, I'm a bit scared, because what if someone uncovers this is a lie? I guess, I never really thought about it.
That makes sense though. And if you were to take us back to that first time performing, where were you? How old were you? How long ago was it now?
It was almost, there was like stuff where I'd, play at like a high school, like lunchtime concert and stuff. But I guess the pinpoint moment for me of like starting to singing for the first time was like when I was 24, 25. And it was literally because I needed money. Okay. It was, I took a job at an advertising agency that was actually an internship. So I didn't get paid for it. Yeah. And then a friend of mine worked at a pub, and he asked me if I could sing, and I said no, because I'd never really done it in public. And then he said, like, do I want $300? And I said yes, like straight away. So it was born out of like necessity, essentially, me singing. So. Okay. Is there something that throughout the past like 10 plus years now, as you've been doing this, that you didn't know when you started that you wish you would have known, I guess, that you know now? Not really. I mean, it's kind of like with that whole like, oh, what's your biggest regret thing? Yeah. And I sometimes think of it as, oh, I wish I started singing early, or I started doing like an artist project when I was in my early 20s. But I think the only reason it's kind of worked now to some degree is because I waited so long. Like, I guess I got all this life experience to sing about, and also, I went through a lot of stuff, like seeing how kind of music industry worked, being in the band and things like that, that it's like, now it's kind of just, okay, I'm a bit older, I'm not like young and green, so it's like, I won't get like screwed over, I guess, because I know what I'm doing. And also, I guess as you approach like your 30s, you stop caring so much about what other people think, which I think is also a great thing to go into music with, because it's so based around what people think about you. Yeah. It's like you have to equally not care, but you also need people to like you to have a career in music at the same time. So it's such a very strange dynamic to balance. Yeah, I bet. And to kind of add to that, you said that you kind of
you mentioned before it started working. When was that moment for you? Was there like a click? Was it like some TikTok video that took off, or just songs that started taking off? Like, what was that, like, I guess, turning point for you, where like, holy shit, like this might actually be going somewhere?
I mean, I still don't think it's going anywhere. That's
Okay.
that's the thing. It's like, I have this joke with my friends. They'll send me updates and stuff with like how the song is going. Like, I just had an album come out yesterday, and they keep sending me stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Like, we've peaked now. Like, we may as well retire. Like, that's it.
Okay.
So I'm naturally very pessimistic, but I'm trying to get a better balance of that. But I have this weird thing of like, I feel like if I start accepting that things are doing well, they'll start going bad.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I was reading a book this morning. I think it's one of those, like, you take it or leave it, but in the moment it felt so true to read, of a lot of people, me included, like stop ourselves from getting to like the things that we really want, because the fear of getting there and like not having anything else to work up to like gets in our own way, which kind of sounds like what you're doing here. And well, I'm in the same boat, but it also kind of sounds a little bit like imposter syndrome to me. Like, do you feel that? Has there been moments on stage where you're like, man, what am I doing here?
A little bit. I mean, like, I love hanging out, like pre-show and post-show, and just hanging out with everyone and getting to know people. Like, I think it's a good way to get rid of nerves, because you cut that dynamic of like, oh, I'm an artist and you're here to listen to the music. Like, I don't like that weird discrepancy kind of thing. So I think, I mean, yeah, that's kind of...
That makes sense though. And I feel like at the end, it probably makes you in a position where you're a lot better able to show up like exactly as who you are, and not as some like persona on stage. Like, I feel like even coming here today, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, funnily enough, which is like, you don't normally expect that. Like, I don't do this every day. Like, you're the first quote unquote artist that I've had the pleasure of sitting in front of, but I've never, like, yes, I was nervous coming here today, but it wasn't like, oh, is he going to be the same? It's like what you expect him, you know?
I'm glad.
And I think like that's props to you. And it kind of leads me to something else that kind of fascinates me about you. Obviously, I love your music, and it speaks to me. It's my like coffee time music, you know, the chill kind of, you put it on and it's great. But I feel like nowadays it seems, at least from the outside, to be mandatory to be on social media if you want to pursue music in any kind of way. What are your opinions on that? Do you feel any pressure around that?
I found, like, I definitely have thoughts and stuff on it, but I actually found a video recently of all people, I think it was Jason Derulo, was doing a podcast, and I was like, I was not expecting great life advice from this person, just because he's like, he's such in a different world, in the pop world, and it's very based around that kind of stuff. But he was kind of talking about, obviously there's that negative thing of people, a lot of people, I guess people starting out and doing music, they want to do music, but they don't want to do all the stuff that comes along with it. Which I think, you know, people are like, oh, I just want to create music and that be it. I shouldn't have to do social media. I'm like, to some extent I agree, but also, you know, there was bands and artists back in the day that probably didn't want to do radio promo when radio was really big, but that was just part of the quote unquote game, I guess, back then. And then now if you want to be a musician, just social media and stuff like that's part of the game. And I think it's just flipping, I guess, your perception on it. Like, it shouldn't be a negative thing. It shouldn't be something that you dread going to do. And yeah, it was funny. Jason Derulo was talking about this, and he was like, it needs to be what you love doing, combine that with your music.
Yeah.
So it's like, whether that's you really enjoy doing pottery, you have to figure out a way for your social media to be pottery with your music, because then when you show up every day to do social media, you're not like, oh, I have to do this.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I feel like something that, again, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I can only speak to what I see externally. You do seem to be someone, though, that has really great boundaries set up. Like, you know, it's not rare, hey guys, I need a weekend, like, I'm stepping away.
Yep.
Has that always been the case for you, or is that something that you've had to learn to be able to do over time?
Something I've had to learn, because like, I love how much people appreciate like me interacting or writing back, but there was a time where it was like, that's super draining. Like, that's a lot of time and also a lot of emotional investment, because I get like emotionally invested into people's lives. Like, they tell me, obviously, you know, I'm writing music that means something to me, so it means something to someone else. They're gonna then bring that to me and tell me about it, and it's like, I'm not just gonna read that and be like, oh cool, that person went through something really tough, like, see ya. Like, obviously then get, you know, emotionally attached and want to help them out and talk them through something and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I had to start I would drain myself a lot doing that, which is like natural, but also I have this guilt feeling of not responding to everyone. But I've tried to start, I mean, it sounds kind of gross, but I tried to start like scheduling hours to do it. So it's like, okay, Monday, 9 till 11, when I'm going to sit in the cafe and usually sit on Pinterest or something like that, I'm going to set that as my right back to people hours. I think that was the only way to balance it. Like, I'll still have a guilt feeling when those 2 hours are up of like, I haven't gotten back to everyone that I wanted to get back to, but I guess it's the only way to be able to keep turning up as much as possible, which I'd rather do than turn up 24/7 and then have to take 2 weeks off because I'm depleted of all energy.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, yes, it's a big part of what you do, but it's not where your main focus is, right? And neither maybe should it be. I guess I don't know. Is there, you said like, you know, there are a lot of things that go into making music and being a musician that like people don't know or naively think that they won't have to do. Can you, like, social media might be one of them. Is there anything else that like from the outside we don't see, but that like actually goes on behind the scenes that goes into what you guys do on a day-to-day basis?
I think there's a lot of like, there's a lot of businessy stuff that you don't have to do, but you see a lot of people get into trouble when they don't understand it or don't know it. Which again, I think is like one of the nice things as well of me getting into music quite late. It's like, you know, you're a bit more aware of like, oh wait, what's happening over here? Why is that happening? Can you explain that to me so I understand and stuff? And you see a lot of, you know, James Blake and Dermot Kennedy, people are coming out now doing their own festivals and trying to do their own shows and things like that, because they're saying, for all these years when we were touring, we never had access to, you know, the people that were coming to our shows. We didn't have access to their emails. It was just companies that owned that. So I think it's lots of those little stuff on the edges that help you, I guess, build your own thing, which like is the way that it should be.
Yeah.
But you just don't think about it. Like, you just want to get up, play songs and like meet people and that's it. But there's, I guess if you want a long career and also a group of people to grow with you like through the years, like that's kind of like an important thing to be able to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of want to pivot a little bit into more of like your creative process behind creating these songs. Like, obviously you had the newest release, your side B of your album released yesterday. What take us behind the scenes of like what that creative process looks like for you, and specifically how it went into this album. It released in 2 parts. What was the story behind that? Why did you choose to do it that way?
Sorry, it's very hard to hear.
I know. I'm trying to talk loud.
It's all right.
Do you want me to repeat?
No, it's all right. We'll wait for him to. He might fade this down in a sec, and then we can readjust it. It's a good song though.
It's pretty good. I was gonna say.
All right.
Sweet.
You give it a go. Yep. What was the question again?
Okay. The question is, can you give us a little bit of a behind the scenes of what your creative process looks like? I guess more generally, and then I want to get into more specifically like this newest album that you just released.
Generally, it changes a lot.
Okay.
And I think as you go through it, like I kind of just dove headfirst into doing music, not knowing really what I wanted to turn out to be like and stuff like that when I very first started. So now it's, as I've, you know, written a lot more and put out more music and things like that, I'd go through big periods of writer's block of being like, okay, cool, I can't write anything for like 6 months. And I used to think that was just like normal, which I think it is to some extent. You can't always be on creatively. Yeah. And you need enough coming in for you to put out musically as well. But I started figuring out there was these, I guess, triggers for me of what helped me get into creative spaces and things like that. And the big thing I think for me was places. Places? I'd get very sick of places very easily. Okay. I don't know, that's probably has some kind of like mental psychic analysis that needs to be done on me, but yeah, I spent a lot of time in the studio in Sweden, which is great. I did my last album there, and we spent like 2 years making and stuff like that, but I think eventually a place is a bit drained of all the creativity that you had in it. I think similar, you know, with artists that go painting, they'll move their studio and things every now and then, so you just need something new. And that was like the whole recent album was like cool, let's go off-grid to a cabin on the west coast of Sweden and see what happens there. And it's just like the album kind of came out that way. So I was like, okay, this kind of proves my theory of places really affect me and how I feel creatively.
Yeah.
So.
And is it like a team of people? Are there multiple of you? Is it just you solo, like off the grid for?
Creatively, it's me and Freddie. So
Okay.
I did years and years ago, I did my first writing trip up to Sweden, and he was the very first person I wrote with. And I was like, oh, this is the guy. Like, we had musical chemistry. It's very much like, I grew up playing a lot of sports, so I'm like, chemistry is such an important thing, I think. And yeah, we've written and recorded everything together ever since. And then even, me and him as we've grown together, we have our own like process now, where we have like our own language where I'm like, oh, this needs to sound more like vanilla. And he's like, okay, yeah, I got you.
Okay.
And so it's usually me and him, and nowadays it's like I'll just be writing voice memos all day, every day, bring them to him. He tells me which ones are bad, which ones are good. We'll fight for a little bit, and then that's kind of the process now. So.
And I know that this happens to me, whether it's with this or something else that I do. Do you ever second guess yourself? Like when you know you've written a hit, do you know it's a hit? Or like, oh shoot, I'm not too sure.
As soon as I like one of my songs, I'm like, it's not any good. I'm like, I feel like I have to hate it for it to be any
Really?
good.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you which one was your favorite, but now I'm gonna ask you which one you hate the most.
But I do have favorites because of what they've done. Like, I love "Blame the Moon" because it's become like a bit of a gateway song for people.
Okay.
Like a lot of people, it's like, oh, that's the first song they heard, and then it let them jump in and hear the rest of the music. So it's like a nice entry point for the rest of the music. And then there's like another song, "Everybody Hates Me," that I don't particularly like that song. I don't like the title. I don't particularly like the sound of the song, but it was one of those like important ones that I wrote, and I'm glad I wrote it and I got it out of my system. I was like, I don't want to call it "Everybody Hates Me." That's way too on the nose. There's no nuance or like poetry in that at all, but it was just straight down the line of exactly what I felt. I'm like, there's no other title for me to call this song. Yeah. So it's one of those songs that's like, I guess, quote unquote, most proud of doing, because I was like, it needed to be written, needed to get out. And I guess I pushed my boundaries with it a little more. And it taught me a lot more going into this album of being a bit more blunt from time to time. Yeah. Like, I don't have to dress everything up lyrically. I can like lay a blank canvas of exactly what I'm feeling. Yeah.
I think people feel that though.
And it's nice. I've discovered as well that it gives those like little blank spots, or where you take the poetry or the imagery out of it. Mm-hmm. It's like it becomes time in songs where people can inject themselves into it, which is agree. As much as I don't like that song, it's kind of taught me
to do that.
Yeah.
That's very neat. Now I'm gonna have to go back and listen and try and pinpoint when that shifted for you. That's cool. Sweet. And so specifically now moving into this album, is there a reason why you chose to do it in two parts? Did you know you were doing it in two parts when you started it?
It was, it's in two parts because there wasn't supposed to be a second part. Okay. So it was just supposed to be one part. And then my plan was like, cool, I want to move on to something else. I want to do like bigger drums and things like that and go back into kind of big band sounding stuff. And then I started writing again. I was like, wait, no. It's like,
not ready.
I could just tell everything I was writing still was in that world still. And I'm like, okay, I still have more in me from that world, and I need to like obviously give it the time that it deserves. So we went back out to the cabin and did a second part to the album. Cool. So
I hope you have pictures of this cabin for you to know and like go back to.
It is. We just put a video yesterday of it. So it's like, seen it yet. It's also, I feel bad calling it a cabin because it's like this giant glass triangle that like a cabin is built inside of.
Oh wow.
So it's like to keep the elements out of like the winter in Sweden. So it's like this big self-sustainable,
that's so cool,
eco-friendly place. But it's a little bit bigger than a cabin.
Okay.
A cabin, I wouldn't call it a house though. So it's like,
yeah, it's quirky. That's so cool though. And is there, because I know a few new ones released, do you have a favorite? Do you think an audience is going to have a favorite in the ones that you've picked out?
My favorites on the next half of the album is "I'm Not Ready to Go."
I'm not ready to go.
So it's like one of those songs I don't usually get too emotional when writing, but that one I kind of like,
It hit home.
Yeah, it hit home a little bit, that one.
And do you mind sharing the story behind it?
What?
Do you mind sharing the story behind it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not
okay.
yet.
That's fine.
I don't think I'm ready to talk about that song just yet.
Okay,
But
that's fine. Is there another one that you think has been super popular with the audience that you'd feel comfortable sharing the story behind it?
I think Bones Shake, which is like the first one off the second half of the album, people really liked and resonated with. I mean, that song was basically just about messing up so bad that you just need to go away for a while and fix it all and come back later. Yeah. And I think there's no like shame in doing that. Being like, cool, my life's a bit of a mess right now. Let me, even like go away to a cabin for 2 weeks, recalibrate, and come back. Not that like all the problems are gonna go away, but you just need to get yourself centered again and kind of,
No, for sure. And is there, kind of like heading myself towards our last couple of questions here, is there something notable that comes to mind when I ask you like what you've learned about yourself the most through this like last 4 or 5 years where you've said that it's ramped up for you and like really become kind of center in your life?
I think it's just like a weird evolving process of like constantly figuring out like little things about myself. Like we were talking about my creative triggers, different places, like little things like that I'm like, okay, I always knew what that feeling was, but I didn't know what made it that feeling. So I think that's also just part of growing up and getting older. It just so happens that I'm doing it at the exact same time. My musical kind of journey is doing the same thing. So it's this, my life and music are very like intertwined in a weird way like that.
I can't imagine being in your shoes and not being that way though.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, but I don't know that I could write something that closely tied to what I'm going through and the lessons I learned and the things that like are happening in my life without it intertwining like that. Like, I don't know. I know some people have said that they have like an artist persona, if you will, that they step into when
Sometimes
they write.
I wish I had one.
You do? Okay, why?
Because it'd be nice to just, you get to switch off.
Okay.
I guess, because when you have that persona, it's like, everything's very compartmentalized. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example, like, I don't know, probably like Ziggy Stardust. Like David Bowie, when he'd go on stage as Ziggy Stardust, would be very much like a performance. He's going into character and he's doing that. And it's, when he leaves the stage and he checks out and goes back to life, it's a different thing. And it's just a way to keep them separate. Sometimes I think there's a lot of beauty in all those things bleeding into each other.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's...
what would you want to compartmentalize though?
I don't know. It's just like, I think there's a nice escape of doing something else that isn't like necessarily you, which I think you get when you play in a band as well.
Okay.
Like when you're a band on stage, you get to like vibe with each other and you become this like team on stage. I think it's more so being like a solo artist thing. It's like, it's always just me, my thoughts, my songs, my words, and they follow me off stage, on stage, wherever I go. So it's like, I'm looking forward to the day when, start bringing more of a band on stage, because you can have that team chemistry on stage that everyone is kind of with you. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, as I'm talking about this, I'm like, am I just lonely? I'm like, maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out here. No, but it's, I think it's very good. I love the way that my music is working, of being very intertwined with my life. So it's like, I wouldn't change anything like that.
No, but I understand. And even if it's, to the extent that I can understand, but even to just have someone to share that with, like I imagine for you that these are a lot of firsts, like the first time visiting places, the first time being in front of a certain size of a crowd, the first time playing X song, like having someone to fall back on, to be able to share that with, I imagine must be something special. Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. And one of the big things, and I kind of mentioned it before we got started, one of the big things that I really enjoy talking about on this podcast with everyone, because I think everyone does this really differently and we can kind of help each other out in that way. One of the big things that's really important to me is mental health. And I'm always curious to know like the tips and tricks that people have. How do you take care of your mental health in hopes that it can help somebody else and continue to normalize that conversation? Yeah.
I'd say my biggest, it's weird calling it like a trick, I guess. But I think it's just switching. It's just doing something different.
Yeah.
I think is the biggest thing. Obviously, I'm a big like fan of obviously the physical, moving things like that. Like doesn't have to be much. Could be just going for a walk or running. I love playing basketball. It's like the one time that my brain is completely switched off from music and I'm just in annoying, aggressive, competitive mode playing basketball with people. But I think it's just finding different stuff to do. Like I know when I get way too, you know, say social media and stuff gets too much, or you know, I've been on tour for a long time, things like that. Like just going home and switching off, and you know, I'll just call some of my friends and be like, would you like to play video games with me for a couple of hours, and just like do something completely different that I haven't done in a while, and just kind of because I think music's a tough one. Any creative industry I think is really tough because you're always on.
Yeah.
It's not like you're showing up to work and checking in at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5 o'clock. It's like, no, it's like you wake up at 1 a.m. with a thought, and it's,
I totally relate to you.
You're constantly on, so it's like when you get that time to switch off, I think you have to take it. But I think that's applicable for everyone in everyday life.
Do you find you have to force yourself to take that time off, or does it come kind of naturally?
I feel really guilty, like taking time off in general.
I think that's super relatable.
I feel guilty sleeping in, so like I have this joke with my friends that I can't start the day until I leave the house, where people are like, oh yeah, I made a coffee at home and I started working on my laptop, and I'm like, how did you do that? Like I have to like physically leave my apartment
until... Must be a places thing for you.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's the same thing like on tour. It's like, you know, I probably should sleep in because I got to bed at 1 or 2 a.m. like after loading out all the gear and things like that. But it's like, my body's like, nope, it's 7 a.m. Let's go. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. I guess I have to because I feel guilty if I sleep in past 8 o'clock.
I think that is so relatable, and you're definitely not alone in feeling that. I know I feel that way, and I'm sure that there's probably many people listening right now like, yeah, that's me too.
Yeah. I'm getting better at it, but it's like, wrestling with rest is a big thing for me, and trying to figure that out.
Yeah. I feel like one of the questions that I've been asking myself lately is like, what is actually going to be restful to you? Because sometimes that answer isn't sleep, right? Yeah. And so finding that kind of happy medium between, yes, relaxing and resting, but like, what does that actually mean? Because I don't think that sleep is the answer every time. Yeah. Like for someone, journaling might be a form of rest that they don't take and they just keep it, you know, like, I guess I can ask, do you think that in certain ways, like your songwriting is a form of rest to you in some sort of way? Like, yes, it's work, but...
It is. I feel like, I don't know, I'd say, I guess the best like kind of description of it is like, the songwriting happens for me when like the knots get too big.
Yeah.
So like, which sounds really like, I don't know, very like self-pain inflicting kind of thing. Like, oh, I have to wait till something gets really bad before I can write about it. But I think, I don't know, that's one of the things that crosses my mind when I'm like, oh, I've got stuff to write about because I've been working through this. So it's like, little things like that, I guess, don't have the same effect, which, sounds really bad now that I'm saying it out loud, but...
Hey, it's okay. Awareness and saying it out loud is the place to start, hey?
But I think it's like the same thing for people that forces a lot of people to go to therapy and things like that. It's like, oh, it's only because the problem got so big that people decide to do things about it.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the same thing with music being my therapy. It's like, okay, the problem's gotten too big, I need to write about this and figure it out.
I get that. Okay, I've got 2 last questions for you. Yep. I think we're pretty good on time. If not, please tell me. But I want to get into the live songs game. So for people that are tuning in a little bit for the first time, I'm going to give it a quick summary, give you some thinking time, and then I'll come back to you. But songs, music in general is a big part of my life. It's a big part of processing emotions, feeling emotions. We didn't really get into that today, but I do believe that those are 2 different things. And I really find it easier to connect with people over music, through music. I love knowing what people are listening to and the songs that have made up like the biggest moments of their life. So now I'll turn it over to you. Is there anything that comes to mind when you think of your life songs, the songs that you come back to that have a story that like get you, you know?
I think there's probably like a couple.
Yeah.
So my mom and dad listened to a lot of music growing up. Okay. None of my family's musical, but
really?
like
that's surprising.
Yeah, we were trying to find someone, but we couldn't find anyone. But I remember, I think for my dad's birthday one year, my mom bought my dad, it was this big fancy like 6 or 5 CD stacker system.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, you no longer have to change the CDs in and out. We can just put like 6 of them in at once, and we can change it. It's like this big moment. And it was always like this, mum would get to choose 3 CDs, dad would get to choose 3 CDs.
That's cool.
So for that, it was like, mum always had, I think Crowded House was like a big one that my mum had in there. So like, Don't Dream It's Over, Crowded House. And my dad would always have like Dean Martin and the Doors in there. So a song called Volare by Dean Martin.
I didn't hear that last one, I'm sorry.
A song called, it's called Volare by Dean Martin.
No, I don't know that one.
He's like an Italian song.
I'll have to go look
but my
into
dad
this.
would walk around the house like very bad singer, just singing it.
That's cool.
And then the other one that was like, was my own, was a song called Milk by Kings of Leon.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
And it was one of those songs like, I loved Kings of Leon when I was like a kid. It was they were the first band I saw at a music festival when I was like 14. And I walked in, I saw the bass player, I was like, I want to do that for a living. I'm like, he just looks so cool. And I love that song Milk. And I used to just like imitate them all the time. And apparently I used to do a very good imitation of Caleb Followill. So I remember, I think I was at a music festival and I was asleep. And my friends who were back in my hometown, and they called me in like the middle of the night. And they were all out and they were very drunk. And they're like, hey man, do the song. I was like, what? I was like, I just woke up, they're like, do that Milk song, like sing it like him. I was like, it's 1 a.m. They're like, just do it. And they like wouldn't let me get off the phone. I mean, I could have just hung up.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And I was just like, so, and I like just did like one line and I just hear them like start cheering. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And I was like,
that's funny.
This weird moment. So that's probably my personal addition to the.
That's a great one. Okay, I have 2 last things for you.
Yep.
I'm going to try to scream so you can hear me.
Okay.
But the podcast is called What Moves You. The reason it's called that, it goes back through a little bit of my personal journey to getting here.
Mm-hmm.
I won't bore you with those details today. But it's a question that I came back to in some darker days that I went through. And really coming back to like, what are the small things that move you? What are the small things that make you smile, that want to make you get up in the morning? And so taking it as like deep and big as you want, or as like minute, like what are the things that move you every day?
I'd say very broadly, like this sounds very cheesy.
That's okay.
In my head, and I'm like, I almost don't want to say it out loud. But
say it out loud.
But people, like, and I've always been a very like, I'm a very solitary person. I love my alone time. I don't need people. But I think, especially in the past few years, I've just like realized how much I do, even if I do enjoy my alone time.
Yeah.
Like I have a cafe that I go to every morning in Stockholm, and I get to see the same baristas every day, and we talk to each other, and it's just this nice interaction that it's probably forced me to be a bit more outgoing than I used to be. I'd always be very like internal and like I don't want to bother anyone. I don't want to disturb anyone, or I don't need to talk to anyone today. I can just hang out by myself. But the more I do that, it's like, okay, talking to people is actually very nice.
Yeah.
And also like, I guess it's part of the human existence is like talking to people and hanging out, just getting to know people, share stories and things like that. It's like, so people. And also, I love writing about people. When I'm not writing about myself, it'll be something I've seen or story that my friends told me and things like that. So it's like people are infinitely fascinating and inspiring if you let them be.
I think that's a great answer, and it did not sound cheesy at all.
That's good.
So before we wrap today, is there anything that you'd like to share to the audience, to anyone? Is there anything else that I didn't touch on that you would have liked to add, would have liked people to know about you? Any last words?
I think we got it covered.
We got it covered?
I think we covered it. It's very noisy, but we got it covered.
Awesome. Well, Hazlett, thank you so much. This has been a hard but really good practice kind of journey. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you got something from it too.